Welcome back to a new episode of the Service Design Show in this special series where we are looking into journey management. I'm here with Tingting Lin. Tingting, before we dive into all the details, what can we expect from this second episode?
Well, it depends on the audiences, and I promise for different audiences, we will bring something new for you, hopefully, and at least useful. So for CX professionals, if you're struggling how to prove the value of your work, then from this episode, you are able to learn how, by connecting qualitative and quantitative data, you're able to connect the CX to the business metrics and business goals so that you can convince executives much easier. And for business leaders, so if you're struggling with the decision making and prioritization based on who shouts loudest, then here we are going to provide you with a big picture of what kind of qualitative and quantitative data you can leverage to make your decision making more confident. And then for the researchers, if you are working either with qualitative or quantitative data, it's going to tell you like what is a portfolio of data you can rely on and what is a gap of the current research data you're looking at and how to combine different sources of data. And then also for product teams and development teams, you will learn like what you can actually leverage from fact and from data to support your prioritization and backlog management. So yeah, for different people, we're basically talking about data-driven decision making and how to collect and utilize your data in the best way.
Mm. So we've got something for everybody. And if you're listening to this episode and you don't fall into one of these buckets, who are you? Leave a comment. Let us know who you are. What makes you interested in these episodes? So thanks for this teaser thinking. Let me zoom out really briefly in case somebody hasn't listened to our first episode. We are doing this series because we're seeing that 60% of customer experience initiatives tend to fail in one way or the other. That involves a lot of service design work as well. And a lot of professionals are struggling to actually do journey management in an effective and impactful way. So there is a lot of effort, there is a lot of goodwill, but it's hard to actually make an impact on business. And that makes our life harder and less fun. And that's why we're doing this series. We want to show you that it is possible to get results and show impact through journey management in a matter of maybe not days, but let's say weeks instead of months, and sort of get the support and buy-in from the rest of the business to do more important work. As I said, this is part of a series. This is episode number 2 in this series. If you haven't listened to episode number 1, check out the links down below. The link to that episode will be here. We are making this a series because we do not want to cram everything in one super long episode, but really want to dive deep into some topics and take more time than just going over these superficial stuff. So if you're here, get prepared to really go into the nitty gritty stuff with us and maybe geek out a little bit on topics that, I don't know, might not be approachable to the broader audience, but for you as an expert, as a professional, probably would be. Tingting, I already mentioned your name, but again, for people who haven't listened to episode number 1, could you give us a brief intro of who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm the principal journey management coach at TheyDo. So then you might ask, what is TheyDo doing? And we are actually a SaaS company providing a collaborative workspace for the customer journey management professionals. And we have been developing our products powered by AI, and we provide actionable intelligence by blending structured and unstructured data, which we will talk about today. And then numbers and emotions, of course, can blend to deliver a complete picture of the customer journey. So that's what we do. And what do I do is, as a journey management coach, I help our customers to really understand what is the best approach of journey management that is suitable in their organizational context. Because of course we have best practices for all the industries, all the companies, but then the context really matters, and the customers of different companies differ a lot, and that's why we dive deep into different contexts with our customers. And by coaching, I help them to prioritize the return on investment cases to connect their CX to business impact. So that's what I do.
Nice. And that's what we want, connecting CX initiatives to impact. And again, just to repeat, like, we are here to help you as a listener be more impactful, be more successful, get through those nasty struggles and challenges that we all face. And we're doing that by showing you just a step-by-step proven process. Tingting, you've seen a lot of companies, you've dealt with a lot of clients. So you see the things that work well and the things where people tend to struggle and where companies tend to fail. And that's what we are trying to get across in this series. In episode 1, we actually started with something that I don't think a lot of people would associate as the first step when you think about journey management, but it was a key and crucial step according to you. Could you give us a quick reminder? What was that episode 1 all about?
It's about the starting point for any journey management effort, and we think is really important if you want to succeed with the CX effort and journey management effort. So it is to clearly define your business challenges. And we talked about what is business challenge, what is the difference between challenges and goals. We gave examples about this, and it might sound easy and obvious, but you would be surprised how many contexts and organizations have been skipping this crucial step when we talk about the starting point of journey management. And that's why a lot of companies also fail to define a business challenge that is able to guide their CX efforts in a meaningful way. So that's why we think it's really important to talk about this in the beginning. And if you haven't listened yet, please follow the links and tune in.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the business challenge, and we've used my service as the case study and we'll continue doing that, it's maybe not hard to define a business challenge. It's hard to define the right business challenge, one that is actually useful, helpful, meaningful. And that's sort of what we explored in episode 1. How do you get a business challenge that actually helps you instead of just a too generic one or a too specific one? So, good episode. How does this second episode and the stuff we're going to talk about regarding data fit into sort of the bigger picture that we're talking about regarding more effective journey management?
Yeah, and then it's also a question about what is the big picture. So from big picture point of view, of course, we're talking about the workflow. That is a classic triple diamond workflow from problem discovery, solution discovery, until solution delivery, and working as an iteration. And then from system point of view, because nowadays we are leveraging so much automation, data, and AI, so we also need to understand the big picture of the system. So we are working towards a decision support system that enabling the decisions with qualitative, quantitative data and delivery orchestration in one place. So all around journeys with actionable intelligence. So in the first episode, we identify, of course, where is the business impact that we want to prioritize first, and then that defines our focus of starting points.
Yeah, and I like what you said about a decision-making tool, or you use similar words, but that's...
Decision support system or decision-making tool.
Yeah. I like that, because that's what you eventually want. Like, we're not journey mapping or journey managing for the sake of it. We want to drive decisions. We want to take initiatives. We want to solve business problems. And we are looking for systems that help us to guide us in the right directions, what to prioritize, where to invest in first. And that is the promise of journeys and journey management. Awesome. All right. So that was an interesting intro to set the context about what has been discussed and what is coming up. One final thing I want to mention in this intro is that at the end of this episode, we will dive into some of the questions from you, the audience, regarding episode 1. We'll highlight a few questions. If you have questions about what Tingting and I are discussing today, please do leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment on YouTube, obviously. And the other option is Spotify, which nowadays also has an option to comment. Or, I don't know, you can also find us on LinkedIn probably and send a message there. But YouTube and Spotify are the easiest. Tingting, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the meat of data collection. So, as a reminder, in the first episode, we talked about business challenges, my business challenge. We said something about the fact that I want to reduce churn in my circle community over the next 12 months. So we already have some data. We have 12 months. We have 30% about churn. What's next? Like, where do we go from there?
Yeah. So as in the business challenge, we can already see we are tracking some data for sure. For example, the churn number, 30%. And then we're going to talk about what else do we need in order to address this business challenge, because the churn number tells you the challenge itself, but it's kind of a lagging indicator. And we need to know more about what is happening by understanding more numbers, of course. But on the other hand, numbers are not enough. We need to understand why it is happening. And I know a lot of CX professionals or business leaders in general are relying heavily on dashboard with numbers and graphs. However, sometimes, especially in organization settings, our reality is not really a mathematical formula. So even though sometimes we think if we change one number, the other number will magically change or logically change even, it doesn't always happen. So I could give you an example.
For sure,
Yeah, I was working with a telecommunication company, and we see that they have made a decision to to increase the spending of sales and marketing cost, so that they expect the transaction rate will go up as well. However, after 1 year, they have made that investment on sales and marketing, but transaction rate is still below the target. And why is that? Because logically speaking, if I spend more on sales and marketing, I would have more transactions, more new customers, and so on. So yeah, I will leave that as a teaser, and we will discuss it when we start to understand why it is happening, and what else do we need to understand to understand what this problem, and then also make the right decision to address this problem. So I'll be a little bit, leaving this later.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, a lot of business leaders, stakeholders hope that by pressing on one specific area, looking at a very specific number, impacting that number, that other things will flow naturally. Unfortunately, like the causal relationships aren't usually that obvious when just looking at numbers. Okay, great. Now what?
Yeah, and let's then start with your story, Mark. And if you remind the audience about your business challenge in full that we discussed last time, we can start from there.
Right. So I already mentioned something about a circle community. For context, I am offering a community you can join and become a member, pay a monthly or yearly subscription fee. This is for in-house service design professionals who want to get together, share best practices. That community is basically a service, like I said. And what I'm seeing is one of the business challenges that we have is that churn is higher. So the number of members who are leaving, let's say within a year, is higher than I would like. I would like to have members stay longer and sort of not cancel their membership for various reasons. So that's the business challenge we're working with. Did I forget anything, Tingting, from the last time?
Nope. I think you have framed it very well. So then from that, I can already see huge opportunity and huge variation of data you're working with. So in order to tackle this challenge, what is your initial thinking and what kind of evidence do you currently have in order to understand the situation and also support your decision?
Yeah. So the obvious thing, at least obvious for me, I don't know, I would love to hear from the listeners, is I'm seeing financial data. So I'm seeing data with regards to how many people are leaving each month. I'm seeing data with what is my member lifetime value. That's one of the things that I'm seeing, and it's very easy to spot how many members are leaving. But I'm also hearing stories from people who are leaving. I'm seeing survey data. We ask our members every 6 months a lot of questions about the community. So that's the kind of data that I have.
Yeah, very interesting. And we can already see like these are very different data, but all of them are important to understand the holistic picture there. So we are going to then dive into what type of data you can rely on and then how to combine them together, of course. And then what are the challenges, Mark, usually you find like do you find you're missing data, you're not able to use the data in the best way and so on?
Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean? Like, yeah.
Because you have like so many different source of data. So do you feel like it is easy to make sense of them all
Mm.
together? Or is there any challenges? Can you make like connections between different data sources easily?
Well, easily is a is sort of a relative understanding. I would say it's not super easy to, for instance, connect the stories from my members to the financial data, to the survey data. It's all there, but I wouldn't say that I have a holistic overview where it's like all these data points make sense together. You sort of have to, I have to do that in my head.
Yeah, so we could never have enough data. That's one thing that we learned. And then also a lot of data, although the variation of data types is really, really appreciated, but then it also brings the challenge of like scattering data here and there. And sometimes, especially in complex organizations, the ownership of data is siloed. And I've seen customers telling me that I don't know what data we have. And if I ask people, some people need to even go into their drawers to, to look at the reports and so on. And this is happening. And people are using different systems to collect both qualitative and quantitative data. They're not in the same place. And then it is super difficult to make sense of the big picture. So siloed data also will cause siloed decision making. So number one, I think we need to try to understand what are the data that could address your business challenge. Because if we take all the data in the company available, it might be too overwhelming. And that's why the business challenge is, again, very important for us to find focus.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that I have siloed data, but even in my case, like it's quite scattered. I'm probably missing that I have other data points. I wouldn't say there is a very clear hierarchy or structure or repository of data or central system. So I can only imagine that if you're working like in a big corporate, like this is going to be even more messy and challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to dive into both qualitative data and quantitative data. We call numbers and emotions, emotions and numbers, although they're not strictly qualitative and quantitative. But then we do understand, like we are collecting text and different stories from everywhere, and then we are also collecting numbers, right? So we are going to deep dive into these different types of the data in a moment. So before we dive in, the key takeaways for now is I think good to remind everyone what are we talking about regarding data collection. So first of all, as we discussed, the data collection should be really purposeful around the business challenges, so that you can have a focus and not be overwhelmed by the ocean of data. And then to address your business challenge, you need to understand it first. So then the data that you're going to collect will tell you what is actually happening. So, and then why things are happening. Remember the story I told in the beginning? We know what is happening, but we don't know why. So we need another type and set of data to complement and understand why are things happening. And then also the context and the reasoning behind the metrics. So both qualitative and quantitative data are important here. And then with that, your data collection can provide a holistic view beyond the surface level phenomena. And then also when we talk about the enough data and focused data, we should also talk about the quality of data. So if we don't have good quality of data, then your decision making is also based on shaky ground. So we say if we use a decision making system and our data in is garbage, then output is also garbage. So that is also very important to keep in mind before we dive into the different type of data.
Yeah, and I can imagine that we can make full episodes about what is enough data, because there's never enough research. You can always find out more, and there are always new questions. And what is good quality? Like, I can imagine that a lot of researchers will find that interesting. I don't think we'll go super deep on that, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we can start with dissecting quantitative data a little bit more. What's there to say about quantitative data, the numbers?
Yes. So regarding the numbers, I think we can start with a very simple but interesting example. Besides my telecommunication example, let's think about our daily life. And now spring is coming and temperature is changing rapidly. So it's 20 degrees outside. When we talk about this, the 20 degree is obviously a very objective number, and it's a fact. It's observable, it's measurable, and it tells us what is happening. And however, does it tell the whole story? Mark, what do you think?
Depends on what you're looking for.
When I say I'm now in Finland, by the way, when I say it's 20 degrees outside, does it make the same context with your feeling if you have 20 degrees outside in Netherlands?
So in the Netherlands, 20 degrees is the same 20 degrees as in Finland, but my experience will be probably quite different compared to your experience.
Yeah. So that's why we say, like, we have measurable numbers that tells us part of the story, but the number is still important. We follow the weather forecast daily just to look at the number, right? And then we can judge like how I will feel about this based on our context.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So it's the same in the business context. When we talk about your business, Mark, when we talk about churn is 30%. And then the 30% is really an objective, measurable number, right? But then it means different things from your business and from other businesses, like in a telecom company. If their churn is 30%, what does it mean? And in your circle community, the same number, what does it mean? Right? And also, when we talk about churn, we need to think about the concept of lagging indicator. So it is a lagging indicator.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so lagging indicator means it's a result of something that is happening and it will take some time to show the changes. So then we need to look for those leading indicators that cause the result of this lagging indicator. So when you see the change of churn, probably a lot of things has happened that you could have done things beforehand that you can change the trend of this metric. But if we don't know what are the leading indicators, it might be too late to take any action.
And that is, of course, the ultimate thing that you're looking for. If you can find reliable leading indicators, yeah, then you know what to do. But finding those leading indicators is obviously like the super hard thing, finding those correlations, right?
Yeah. So one easy way is to look at what else are you measuring? Because with all these numbers, you can then make a judgment which are leading indicator, which are lagging indicator, right? For example, you were talking about the attendance rates of the circle members to different events, and also the other numbers you can measure through day-to-day interaction. So those probably could be a leading indicator that would cause churn or retention to understand what is happening. So even putting these numbers in the same context will help us to understand their correlations together.
Yeah, and it's almost like a fractal because every lagging indicator or every leading indicator can be a lagging indicator for something else. So I'll give you an example. We also look at how proud are members to be part of this community on a score from 1 to 10. You could say like that might be a leading indicator to churn. But then again, if we look at how proud are you to be a member, there are probably other indicators that influence that specific metric. So it's like a full chain or an ecosystem or a cascading fractal, whatever you want to call it. I think there was a map, like a systems map. Metrics influence each other and nothing is isolated, most likely.
Yeah, and you touch a very important point in the organization context because we work with humans, right? So it's never a mathematical formula.
Oh, with AI agents nowadays.
Nowadays, yes. So collaboration with human and AIs, let's say, in this context, still the correlations are fluid. And we need to make our interpretation of numbers in a bit different way than strict mathematical formulas. Because like you said, we could have identified different correlations when the leading indicator become lagging indicator. And it's always important to understand what are the different data points that could influence each other and why is that, right? Yeah. And then also like with more comprehensive data that are, again, related to your business challenge, the more comprehensive and focused, of course, it indicates the quality as well. So with both quality and quantity of the data, it gives you always a clearer picture of what is going on.
And what do you mean with comprehensive thinking before you move? What is comprehensive?
Comprehensive, if we talk about numbers, of course, the holistic picture, you need both numbers and qualitative data. But then when we talk about numbers, be sure to measure whatever you can measure related to your business challenge. So for example, the only measuring churn is not enough. You also need to measure the other leading indicators that might be impacting the churn. And then when you measure the proud of your circle members, you also need to understand what else are influencing this proud as well. So it becomes a chain of different correlation and logic.
Yeah. So it's not always the case, but the more you measure, the fuller and richer the picture will become, right? With an asterisk, yeah.
Yeah, but then of course we have limited resources, and then the business impact is the North Star, let's say, to help us to scope our data collection in the most efficient way. And then also, this will help us to have more confident prediction, because the numbers basically will are being used for prediction and forecast and so on. So how can we become more confident about this? And of course, we will compare the prediction with the fact. Like the example I mentioned, well, we predict if we increase the spending, we would increase the sales and also the transaction rate. But then when it doesn't happen, then we know, okay, we have a gap in the understanding. We need to collect more data to be more confident through the fact, right? And then less reliance on assumptions and less risk. So if we make a lot of assumptions or base our decisions and prediction on who shouts loudest, it will become more risky for us or the decision making. Yeah.
Yeah. A few things that are going through my mind here. I know a lot of CX professionals, service design professionals just struggle to get the organization to measure the right things. An organization might be measuring already a lot, but that's not useful to your actual challenge, or at least not in the metrics that you'd like. So sometimes even establishing a measuring system is part of your assignment. And the other thing that I'm curious about Tingting is, okay, I have a lot of data in numbers, quantitative. Right now, I have it beautifully visualized in Google Sheets. I have some fantastic charts that are going up and down. But we're talking about journey management. Like, all right, journeys, Google Sheets. Like, why are we talking about this? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah, so I remember a few weeks ago, we had a good webinar about the dashboard, the death of dashboard, actually, from TheyDo. You could check that out as well. So there we were reflecting, where are we moving towards from dashboard to journeys, and why is that? And we identified that although dashboards are important to understand the trends of important metrics, but then it's really difficult to understand the correlation between them because these metrics are not contextualized. So, and like I mentioned, it's difficult to understand the leading and lagging numbers. And also then you don't know where in the touch point and in the customer journey or in the customer experience, these numbers become important, right? So then in order to also bring the customer's perspective, that is very powerful to help us in decision making, we think journeys provides the necessary context for those different metrics. So even if you only focus on numbers, because now we're talking about numbers, if you organize them in a journey context, and immediately you would see the customer point of view. So for example, the sales and marketing spend, where is it in the customer journey? It is usually in the I become aware journey if we're talking about new customers. And then it might be in the later stages for existing customers, like I evaluate the service and so on, right? I use. So in different steps of the customer journey, the same number might mean different things. So it will hint you, like, is it enough, the number I'm collecting? And should I just split the number into new customers and existing customer, as an example, right? So it's already enriching the data collection with a context. And then with journeys, we can also bring in like more meaningful interpretation than a dashboard without context and also from customers' point of view. So that's why we think it's really useful to put them into journeys.
Okay. And I see this in my case, like we have this number, I don't know, of 30% churning within 12 months. I see that number in Google Sheets. When I would use a journey and I would, for instance, map, which I have done or I'm still doing, um, the member experience, I could sort of try to identify moments in the journey that could have an influence on churn. That would already give me some starting points and some hints and maybe lead to some new questions and make that number of 30% more interesting, more actionable already by putting it in a journey. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And also the journey will tell you what kind of data are emerging from the journey itself, because the churn is a business performance number, let's say business performance metrics that you're measuring. But then in order to understand it better, you need other numbers. For example, the CX performance, like you mentioned about the proud of your customer, your members, and then we also have these behavior data that you can insert into different steps of your customer journey. For example, the sign-ups, the cancellations, attendance rate, and so on. So these are naturally occurring that you can measure from the existing tools and systems that you can put in the same journey context. So journey is also able to provide you a framework to combine these different types of the data.
Yeah, and you could sort of see the same data on a dashboard, sign-ups and churn and everything else that you mentioned. But what you are missing is like the story, right? That's what you're not seeing on a dashboard. You're seeing the facts. You're seeing that it's 20 degrees in Finland and you're seeing that it's 19 in the Netherlands, but you don't have the story. And that's what you hopefully, or that's the promise of connecting those numbers, plotting those numbers inside a journey, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now, great. I have tons of quantitative data. I will add them to my journey. Are we done?
Yeah, I think we can move into the qualitative data, but before we move there, maybe we also line out some key takeaways from quantitative
Sure,
data.
let's do a quick recap. Yeah.
Yeah, so the numbers are to improve our understanding of what is happening in your business, of course. And then we need to have the complementary portfolio of lagging indicators with leading indicators. So that's very important to understand the whole logic. And then we need to also consider different types of quantitative metrics, like the business performance, CX performance, behavior data, and so on, and put it into a journey context. And then consider also the different ways of collecting these numbers. A lot of numbers are naturally occurring data, like in different tools and different systems, but you can also generate data by yourself, like using surveys and so on. So
Nice. Again, quantitative data. Done. Okay. Are we fully done? Can we wrap up? Is this the end of the episode, Tingting?
No, of course not, because we need a very important part of the data that is qualitative data. And my story is not completed without qualitative data yet. So first we go into the story of the 20 degrees, right? So we already talked about we feel differently with 20 degrees in different contexts. For example, I just came back from Spain last week, and with 20 degrees, I see people with feather jackets on the street. But then I guess, Mark, in Netherlands, people are already wearing t-shirt.
Wearing shorts, flip-flops, everything. 20 degrees, it's summertime. Yeah.
Yeah, so context means really different context brings meaning to different people, and we feel different in different contexts, even if we have the same number from measurement point of view. So, and also qualitative data help us to understand the motivations, the why behind. And like in the example, the telecommunication company, then we dived into customer feedback data. And guess what? We can then understand why is it happening. We invest and we cannot get the transaction rate up because the customers are really painful about the aggressive sales tactics. So the investment become a pain for customer. And then, of course, the customer will not do business with you. And that explains the focus of the decision making is in a wrong direction. So then it's easy for them to shift this direction next time to fix the approach of sales and marketing rather than putting more money into it.
This is, I would say, what we as service design professionals love to do. This is about understanding why things are happening, asking the 5 why questions, digging deeper, understanding the root cause. Like, this is our bread and butter. So I'm happy that you're mentioning it here. How does this impact our story, that the business challenge that we're working on for me?
Yeah, for sure. So we can also ask some deeper questions to understand the why behind the churn, right? So, for example, qualitative data also tells us what is not happening. So it also tells us, like, for example, despite churn, we still have a lot of members that we can retain. And why are they not leaving? And why do they feel it's worth to stay a member of the circle, right? And also, in your business, you should learn a lot of things about the motives of your members, the motivations behind through qualitative inquiries and collecting different qualitative data. So I'm sure you're doing a lot of those. Give us some examples, please.
Yeah, so I try to eat our own dog food as a service design community. So we do a lot of interviews with our members in very different stages of the member journey. Again, I said we survey members, but those surveys often include a lot of open-ended questions. I just talk to a lot of members. I see members posting on LinkedIn stories about our community. So there's a lot of qualitative data already present in sometimes structured form and sometimes in less structured form.
Yeah, and most of the time, actually, the qualitative data looks less structured than the quantitative data. And that's totally okay because that's a nature of our day-to-day interaction in any context, right? It's unstructured, and then it's us who make sense of it and make a structure out of it from the data analysis. So from what you have mentioned also, there is an interesting point of a distinction between naturally occurring data and researcher-generated data. I already mentioned it briefly in the numbers part, but it's becoming even more important in qualitative data collection. When we talk about understanding emotions, understanding qualitative data, we often first think of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So interviews is a very common method that we use to collect the rich data and collect the members or the users' understanding. But that is the researcher-generated data. And when you conduct interviews, depending on how you ask the questions, there is always something that is left out. If you don't know what to ask, then you will not get the answer as well. So we need to combine this kind of interview and survey the same way that is researcher generated and based on the framework that we imposed into the data collection. We need to combine it with also naturally occurring data. You already mentioned some very good examples of naturally occurring data, like the LinkedIn posts and what are people talking about during the events, and even the customer feedbacks or member feedbacks, member conversations in the comment section, in their conversations, and so on. So all these are not generated by the researcher. So even if you are not there to ask the question, they are naturally having the conversation and generating this qualitative data. So this naturally occurring data is super powerful to understand what is not happening and why is that, and then it will bring you emerging contexts that might surprise you as well, and those would be very important to understand some questions that you couldn't understand before, the why question. Of course, the interviews will also answer some of the why question, but again, if you don't know what to ask, you don't get the answers as well. So combining naturally occurring data with the interviews and surveys are very, very important. So in this regard, I'm actually curious, have you got any insights from those naturally occurring data that surprise you?
Um, I have to be honest that I don't really monitor that naturally occurring data very deeply. Um, I do collect them usually to get some, let's call them testimonials or sort of praise or things that people appreciate about the community. And I think, so what's one thing that I have gotten from this naturally occurring data? The fact that people appreciate being in recurring rhythm. So our community members meet twice a month. There is a rhythm to it. It's different than a Slack channel, which is always ongoing. And to my extent, it surprised me how much value this rhythm gives members. That's
How
one
did you
thing.
learn? How did you learn about that?
They just say that in their LinkedIn posts that they appreciate being able to get together on a frequent basis with their peers.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's basically the power of naturally occurring data, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We talked a lot about qualitative data. Maybe not so much things are new for our audiences. Like you mentioned, Mark, they are expert about it already. So let's quickly wrap up this
All right.
section.
So if you had to sort of pick out things you feel we should remember about qualitative data, what would it be?
I think it's three things. First, it helps understanding of the why question behind the quantitative metrics. So that's, of course, number one, very important. And second is combining this researcher-generated and naturally occurring data to have the emerging understanding what we don't know before. And third, maybe I didn't mention it yet, but don't worry about the unstructured nature of the qualitative data. And especially if you are using automation tools like AI to process your qualitative data, it's actually better to be unstructured rather than structured, because if you manually analyze the data, it will impose a structure into the input. So you might also lose something. It's similar to the naturally occurring data. You might lose the emerging findings. So these three things, I think, are takeaways here.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to it, I've been recently playing with Journey AI. There is another video on that, and I'm stunned by how much work you can get done. And I know there are conversations about quality of the work, but if you do interviews and you sort of feed them into large language models these days, the insights, the opportunities, the ideas, the things that emerge out of that using AI is already at a very high level. Sure, it might not be just as good as human researchers, but it's 10 times, 20 times, 100 times faster and 10 times cheaper. So definitely something to be on the lookout for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always tell my customers that using AI, you can spend more time on the more meaningful work, like data
exactly.
collection. You can collect more data, and then on the data validation and pushing to the action.
Exactly. Yeah. So you you have more time to do the actual interviews, and you have more time to curate the output of the AI of the system. But that's a different episode. If you're interested in that, check out the conversation I had with Justas from TheyDo. Okay, Tingting. So we have our business challenge. We have evidence in the form of numbers, quantitative data. We have evidence in the form of qualitative data, stories, interviews, LinkedIn posts, and we have journeys. Now, if we put all this together in a big mixer, what happens?
Then you can tell the full story. Simply that.
How? Yeah.
And then,
is it that easy?
Well, it's easier than if you have only part of the data. Let's take your story as an example. So you now have much more understanding of why the churn is happening and what other numbers are indicating the churn and what are people talking about that tells you what you should do, right? Can you open it up a little bit, like what is becoming evident after you have collected both the qualitative and quantitative data, combining the numbers and emotions?
Yeah, so I had to look into this prior to our conversation to understand really what is the story that is emerging and what are some of these potentially leading indicators. So one of the insights that is emerging is I ask people who are leaving, like, what if we could change one thing that would make you stay, what would it be? One of the things that comes up often is it's hard for me to invest the time to actually participate in these monthly sessions. We chose a model where you actually need to go to the gym and exercise instead of sitting behind your screen and sort of reading Slack. So it's quite involved. And sometimes, family gets prioritized, work gets prioritized, and it's hard to actually contribute and participate in the community. So that is like the qualitative data and the stories. And I was looking at the other thing that we are tracking, the numbers. We are tracking attendance rate in sessions on a session by session basis, but also on a member by member basis. And I was curious, like, is there a correlation between attendance rate going down for an individual member and their chance of churning within a certain time frame going up? And no surprise, like if you listen to the why and you look at the attendance rate, there seems to be a correlation there.
Yeah, so you are already talking about different techniques to combine the qualitative and quantitative data. So from the qualitative data, you understand what is happening. People don't have time, and then although they appreciate this cadence, but they can't always synchronously participate this. And then you also mentioned the churn and participation rate. So you combine all these together, and these data become complementary to tell the whole story there. And also some data are triangulating each other. So they confirm each other from qualitative and quantitative data. From quantitative data, you see a downtrend. And from qualitative data, maybe you also sense a downtrend of the sentiment as well. And then sometimes when you have the qualitative data, like people don't have time, then it makes you curious to ask particularly particularly, for example, in a survey, how much time you would want to invest in this kind of activities and what frequency. So in this way, the qualitative data is facilitating your design of quantitative data collection as well. So they can really be combined in different meaningful ways to make your data in better quality. When we talk about quality, like we mentioned, it's not only about amount, the quantity, but also how focused it is to address your business challenge. And then also combining both data sources, you will enhance the quality through this triangulation, facilitation, and complementary approaches.
I think a really important point to make here is it's not an entirely guess. I have this data and I sort of, because I'm able to oversee the different data points, the different data silos, I'm sort of able to make this story quite naturally, instinctively, based on maybe intuition. But it's obvious that if you have a central place where you can enter this type of, let's call it evidence, this type of data, and that central place is the journey, these correlations are going to emerge, and they are going to emerge the more data you feed in, the more qualitative data you feed into the system, the more interesting, rich, and sort of reliable these insights will be that emerge. Again, my example is maybe a little bit simplistic, but in a larger organization, like I wouldn't know a different way or a better way to get the story.
Yeah, like my telecommunication company, they actually, like, it sounds really simple, but you need to really collect these data of financial data. You need to collect the behavior data and so on to understand the trend, and then collect the customer feedback data, maybe combined with call center transcriptions and so on. Then you understand the pain points and the reason behind the puzzling formula, let's say. So like you said, data is really contextualized through the journey, and journey help you to interpret both the qualitative and quantitative data. And they're not just about mapping the steps, but also about understanding the deeper story behind the customer expectations and experience.
Yeah. And again, just to re-emphasize this, the journey is the way to link all these different, seemingly sometimes irrelatable data sources, data points that often live in very different systems. How do you bring them together? How do you make one cohesive, meaningful story out of this that helps you, like you said in the beginning of the episode, to drive decisions? Because that's in the end what we are striving towards, right?
Yeah. So just to wrap up this section, I think it's fair to say Journey is the most powerful business tool we can have, because it provides the context for your data. And the ultimate goal is, of course, to support decision making through the journeys. And we believe with more rich context, decision making become more rational and confident, and we can reduce risks as well.
Awesome. So we're almost there. We've got two more things we need to cover. We have one bonus section for everybody who's still with us, where we go into the questions from the audience. But first, Tingting, episode 1 was business challenges. Somebody might be confused. Where are the journeys? No journeys there. The second episode was about data. Somebody might be confused. Where's the journey? Where's the journey? Where's the journey management? It's not sort of fully there. Tingting, what is episode 3 going to be about?
We're finally going to talk about journeys. And after we understand the business impact, the data, we're going to talk about how are a good journey look like? How is a good journey look like? Because for service designers, you might be mapping journey for 10, 20 years, and you have a specific purpose and visualization of your journey. But in this new context, and also considering new technology like AI and automation and integration, what kind of format we will see, form of journeys we will see now that could be most relevant for business decision making, right? So I think we are going to open up a little bit about the journey finally in the next episode.
Yeah, so this was about setting the stage, preparing, making sure that we are in the good spot, making sure that we have the information that we need. And then from now on, we're going to see how does that combine and how can we quickly get into things that make an impact on the business. Looking forward to that episode already. Now, this is our sort of, it's not the appetizer, it's the dessert for everybody who's still listening. We have some questions from the audience regarding episode 1. Again, a reminder, if you have questions about what we have just explored in this second episode, leave them in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify, or find Tingting or me on LinkedIn. That's also fine. And then we'll try to address some of these questions in episode number 3. But let's go back to episode number 1. Tingting, can you highlight maybe 1 or 2 questions that we received about the business challenge related episode?
Yeah, I receive a lot of questions about stakeholders, actually, like who should own the business challenges. And then if I am just working for like as a UX designer in a product team, how am I going to contribute to the business challenges and so on? So all very good question, but like in short, the business challenges should be owned by stakeholders with KPI responsibility. So, for example, a business challenge should not only be my NPS go up 2 points or something like that, because we need to have the ultimate business goal for the company. That is, like you said, Mark, always related with money. So, but as CX professionals, you are important facilitator to connect the dots, of course. And then we should also understand the granularity level of the business challenges. It can be a big challenge like reduce churn. It can also be a more granular challenge like why is click-through rates on the page declining? And then you feel like, okay, I can own this business challenge as a UX designer as well. I can make the flow much better to increase the click-through rate. But then it's very important to connect the granular business challenges to the higher level challenges. By increasing click-through rate, you are contributing to higher transaction rate. For example, that will be a KPI owned by a business stakeholder. So we need to make these connections between own target across different levels of the organization and reflect that in the business challenge we're focusing on, depending on our decision power, authority, and also the resources we have.
So this is the classic design answer. It depends. Who owns the business challenge? Who owns the business challenge? The person with the KPI responsibility, and who that is, it depends on how granular the KPIs are that you are tracking, correct?
Yeah, so it depends means that you need to understand the context. You need to understand the organization structure, the hierarchies, and also the decision powers.
Yeah, and that is, we say it quite lightly, but that is actually quite tricky and challenging and sometimes requires a lot of effort to get it right. But yeah, it is what it is. Did we have any other questions that stood out for you?
Yeah, most of them are about the stakeholders, because I think it's the right direction, because service designers and CX people are more and more important, like in as a generic connector between to de-silo different departments. So their value, instead of a number, the KPI they own, it would be more like alignment in the organization. But also it's important for them to know who they are helping and which KPI they're contributing to. So that is actually very good questions from this point of view.
Yeah. If you want to know more about the business challenge, how to define a good, meaningful, useful business challenge, how to think about KPIs, objectives, and goals, make sure you check out episode number 1 if you haven't done so already. The link is in the show notes. If you are curious about TheyDo, there is a link in the show notes where you can sign up for a free account and sort of get your hands dirty with journey management on a very interesting scale, or if you're already using TheyDo, good for you. So check out all the show notes for all the relevant links. And of course, like I said, leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify if you have any questions or sort of positive remarks about what we're doing here in these episodes. Finally, I want to thank you, Tingting, for being my partner in this second episode exploring effective journey management with me. I'm looking forward to episode number 3. Thanks for being here and see you soon.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. I'll see you in the next episode.